morning or good afternoon for members of the Fierce Leader movement. It's been a little time that since the last video, or if it's you watching in replay, maybe it's not that much time, but I was reflecting on something I really wanted to share, but I needed to let that sink in really. And you want to hear that if you tend to judge yourself very harshly. You may want, maybe you don't. You may want to hear that. If it's the first time you see one of the videos, say hello in comment, even if it's a video, even if it's online word. I like to see and to know who is watching, and I can say hello properly and greet you and get to know you. And if it's another video you've been watching, then welcome back, and I'm really glad if you're enjoying these videos. I'll make some updates at the end of the video, but let's dive into the topic today. We're going to talk about judger. The first time I really got the concept of judger was when I had my training in positive psychology and applied positive psychology. So because we were talking about the concepts on the mind and how, because it's applied positive psychology, how it applies to human behaviors, thinking, and relationships. The judger came in contrast with the learner. Either we learn or we judge. And when you observe around you, you may actually figure that those who tend to judge and criticize very easily are actually not those who either do a lot or learn a lot. Here is the thing. I'm going to share some personal pathway here. I've always been judging myself very, very harsh, and sometimes maybe you'll resonate with that. Sometimes I would be the meanest voice ever that you wouldn't even dare to dream someone being like that, but actually unconsciously you're doing it to yourself. And I would be that, very rude, very scary, very the mean to just the mean with the purpose to be mean voice. And I've been reflecting because I keep learning, I keep looking at books and webinars and see how I can apply that in my mediation practice, in my mentoring practice with people seeking to establish relationships that are moving forward. How can I apply that? And so I realized that I was actually the one that was the worst with myself. I would not tolerate anybody to talk to me like that. I would not tolerate anybody to be violent, to be psychological manipulative, to be emotionally draining. I would not allow that anybody being that with me, and yet I was doing it with myself. And in a psychology context, you hear, when you dive into psychology, sometimes you're gonna hear psychologists or therapists saying, well, is that really your voice? Is that not your parents' voice? Is that someone else's voice? Like, figure out. But when it's unconscious, when it's really in the subconscious, you're not really aware of that, and you're like, I don't know. No, I've been working on myself for years. I've been in therapy. I've been doing the job, and no, I cleared up everything. Don't say that. So, and yet, I think that's a subtle layer underneath. What I've been reflecting on, I have some notes here that I don't forget anything that I want to say. What I've been reflecting on is that I've been reflecting on, well, I'm going to tell you that if you want to also do the journaling, that you can also reflect on that. So basically, I've been reflecting on what I'm aware of. What does that mean for me to be more playful, to be more spontaneous? I've been reflecting on where and when and with whom I've been feeling that way. More less worried of an outcome, less perfectionist, less directive on it has to be that way, less judging. And by reflecting on that, I realized, going back, it's like a pull of thread. You go back and back and back, and it most likely leads to childhood. So even if it's not the work I do, and I'm always saying to clients, if you feel it's something you need to dive deeper into with a therapist, then seek a professional. But within the context here in this video and in my sessions, we're not diving into childhood. What I'm going to share here is my personal experience for you to understand what follows after. So I'm pulling that thread to see, okay, I've actually always been kind of very goal-oriented, very driven by outcomes. But why? Like, have I ever learned to be playful? Like, for you to know, my favorite activity on weekends when I was a kid was to do the homework for the class. What kids did that? Nobody. Nobody does this. But it was my fun. To me, it was my fun. But was that really my fun because I chose it, or was my fun because, well, that was by default? And so I was in that exploration and in that mindset a little bit. And I was pulling the thread a little more and a little more. And then I realized, well, how did I learn that playfulness was not something important? That we had to always, if we were doing something, it had to lead to an outcome. Like, when did I learn that? And so I'm pulling the thread and pulling the thread. And then I realized that one of my parents was very, very judging. Did that bring a result? Did that bring a good grade at school? Did that bring a good result with the teacher? Or what did you do that brought something, an outcome that was positive? There is no room for just doing something for the sake of doing something. It was always getting to an outcome. Now here's a catch. If the outcome was not what that parent wanted, what would happen? Critic, judgment, blame, punishment eventually. So you got that since you're very young. Maybe one of your parents was doing it. Maybe one of your a teacher or a mentor or coach in sport, and someone maybe was doing it with you when you were very young, learning that blaming you or judging you or letting you know, okay, you did not get the outcome I wanted, so you're bad. Basically, that's what judgment is. And so I start to see very clearly the pattern here, and I start to see, oh my, that harsh judgment, that very mean voice I was talking about is not mine. Is actually from someone else that was transferring on me its own disappointment, its own deception of not reaching the outcome that person wanted. But what's the problem with that? It's as kids, as young people, we learn by failing, we learn by trying and trying and trying until we get it. And by bouncing back, by learning the skill to bounce back from an outcome we didn't reach we wanted to, when we bounce back from that, we actually grow into emotional resilience and emotional maturity. If your parents don't do that, don't know because they themselves, they just never learned to do that, they will not know how to teach you that. And you're most likely going to copy the same pattern from them. Until maybe eventually later, you learn it. When you start to reflect, when you get older, in your teen years, in young adulthood, when you reach between 15 and 21, when you reach that time where you start to like rebel a little bit about everything you've learned, the structure changes. And it's not a bad thing, because the structure changes, and so you can create the structure that fits you, the belief, the pattern. It's like you take a broom and you just clean up on a porch. It's what happens during those years. And then you build. And your early years of adulthood is what it is you're building your own thing. So what it leads to when you've learned from a parent, from just an adult that was a reference to you, you've learned that if I don't reach an outcome, then I'm being to blame. Then in the end, you grow as an adult. You don't have any adult telling you what to do, but you've let's say like downloaded that pattern in your brain, and so you're going to judge yourself very harshly, depending on how harshly they were. This reflection just was I hope it really brings a big relief to you if you watch that video, the same way it did to me, to realize that this harsh judger here is not you. It's something you've learned to do because someone was doing it with you. And so when you look at the concept, it's already over 10 minutes, so I'm not going to dive deeper into that, but when you look at what emotionally maturity means, and so by contrast, immature, being emotionally immature, usually that person being emotionally immature kind of transfer its own emotions onto a child, onto other people, because they don't know how to deal their emotion. And so if they feel crappy, if they feel bad, if they feel disappointed, if they feel a failure, if they feel whatever emotion, they're gonna transfer on you. And that's how that's how it gets that the voice gets into you, and then growing up you get that judgment. Let's breathe. So, what is important is to clean the porch, is to make space what is yours, what is not yours, is to create a lot of space, what is yours, what is not yours, and to clean everything that is not yours. It may have given you structure in the past, it may have helped you in the past, but today, if you suffer from judging yourself very hard, if you feel restrained by the fact that you hear that little judger all the time, anything you try to do something fun and you look at it, you're like, yeah, that could be better. It's not perfect, but well, that will do it. With no real satisfaction. Oh, I'm glad what I've done. It looks pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like it so. But if instead you have like, well, I saw that thing on Pinterest, they were doing like this, what I've done is just a mess, can't do that, it's terrible, I can't do anything. If you have that kind of talk, then it's very much time for a big cleaning before the winter. So that's very important. I think we underestimate the impact of what we learn during the early years. Briefly, why there is a harsh judgment? usually it's related to the fear of feeling disappointed. And to avoid being disappointed, we're gonna judge ourselves. To protect ourselves from feeling the disappointment, because we had hoped to succeed, but maybe we didn't, and so we feel disappointed because we had an expectation to reach a certain outcome. And to protect ourselves to feel that disappointment that sometimes can feel like we're crumbling a little bit. And so to protect ourselves from feeling that, then we're gonna judge ourselves. See? You could have done better. That's not great. So we'd rather be harsh than vulnerable. And that's the catch. Now, it's a vicious circle because usually a reaction to this very harsh judgment is going to be the fear of failure. I invite you to remember how it was when you knew that if you were bringing a bad grade at home, your parent would punish you, and so you would fear the next exam. Maybe you would fear to not succeed, to not have a good grade, because if you had, then you would be punished, and you didn't want to be punished. But punishment is actually the action of judging. So when we get that harsh judger in our mind, ultimately we fear failure, because it's a natural reaction, emotional response to being judged very harshly. There is no room for failure. There is no room for mistakes. There is no room for anything but the one outcome that is expected by the judger. You see now that all the connections that are being made, it's like a web. All the little threads connecting with each other, and picture appears very clearly. Now, before we end that video, who is disappointed if you don't get the outcome? The harsh judger. But we've seen that the harsh judger is most likely not your voice. It's the voice of someone in the past that led you to think you have to do so. So the harsh judger will be disappointed if you make a mistake, if you don't get the best job, if you don't get the promotion, if you don't get the great master degree, if you don't get the success career, if you don't get the perfect family, perfect kids. Harsh judger is gonna look at, wow, you're such a failure. The harsh judger is gonna be disappointed. So why would you take on that disappointment yourself? Because obviously those are clearly two different identities. And the harsh judger is not an identity that belongs to you. So why would you take on their emotion of disappointment? There is no reason why. If not, you believe you have to judge yourself, and then you're gonna feel. But re-listen to the previous minutes. We just explained the harsh judger has nothing to do with you inside. They're gonna be disappointed, not you, because you are either knowing or retraining yourself that you can do mistakes, you can learn from them, and ultimately you'll get to where you want to go, because nobody keeps failing forever. That's just, even statistically, the probability is very, very, very infinite. So ultimately, by keep trying, you'll go where you want to go. And you'll learn from it. You'll be more creative. You'll be more solution-oriented. You'll grow different skills out of the mistakes. And you don't have the pressure that it's either this outcome or nothing else. No, that can be this outcome, but if I make a mistake here, maybe that gives me another idea and I have another outcome, and you have multitude of possibilities. Breathe a bit. Take a breath. So I'll let you reflect on that. That's a big piece of those videos. Like, today's video is really, really a big piece. I emphasize the importance of that video to watch, rewatch, re-listen. When you walk, when you run, when you're on bicycle, when you drive somewhere, re-listen to it. Reflect, contemplate, journal on it. And let me know what happens for you internally and externally. What happens when you start to realize, wow, it was never mine to wear. This language of perfection and judgment was never mine to wear. All right. But a little update. All the videos are being posted on YouTube. So you're gonna have in the Weaver Podcast section playlist of YouTube, on the Weaver Podcast YouTube channel, you're gonna have all the videos. And so what I really like about that is that sometimes I like to have playlists where I can just listen to the videos one after the other when I walk the dogs, when I go work outside in the backyard, on the land or in the woods or something, and I like just to have something to listen to, and I just don't have to worry about choosing which video. I can just go over the playlist. So I think that's really nice to have, and you can do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. It gives you plenty of minutes and hours. I'll make a count at the end, but there is a lot of time to listen to. All right, well, I hope this video will really find its path to you, because this is such an important piece, really, really, really. But in the meantime, take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself, and we talk soon. Bye.